Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Thank you for participating in the International Plant Breeding Seminar today. We have the honor of having Dr. Dorcas Ibitoye from the National Horticultural Research Institute in Nigeria. And Dorcas obtained her Bachelor of Science and her Master's from the University of Ibadan and the PhD from the West African Center for Crop Improvement in Ghana. Dorcas has worked together with stakeholders on developing product profiles for chosen crops to capture stakeholders' preferences for different market niches and translate that into breeding programs. Dorcas has several publications, had mentored a lot of students, have teach classes and participated in different courses, and she's very well recognized not only in Nigeria but also in Africa, being a member of different organizations like the Nigerian Plant Breeding Association and African Plant Breeding Association. Dorcas, it's a pleasure to have you with us, and I'm going to share your slides from here since there's some issues with your sharing the screen. And okay, if you want to open your microphone and start talking and tell me when to move the slides, please.
Okay. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everyone, wherever you may be. Thank you, Carlos. I believe everyone can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you well.
All right. Okay. So we start. Thank you very much, Carlos, for giving me this opportunity to make this presentation at this International Plant Breeding Seminar Series. And the topic I will be speaking to this afternoon is about the market intelligence research in cultivar development, the bottom-up approach to improving variety adoption. I am Dorcas Ibitoye, and I'm a director of research working with the National Horticultural Research Institute based here in Ibadan. I'm a plant breeder by training. Please, the next slide, Carlos. Yes, for many of you that may not know what National Horticultural Research Institute is, who we are and what we do and where we are based, I just give a just brief overview of what the institute is all about. The institute has the national mandate on genetic improvement of fruits, vegetables, spices, and every ornamental plant species. NIHOT happens to be the only national research institution across in the sub-Saharan Africa that has this mandate on these food commodities. And we also have the mandate on production and processing to enhance the production techniques of our stakeholders, their post-harvest handling to reduce waste and improve quality. As we all know that horticultural crops are highly perishable crops. We are also to carry out sustainable practices to promote sustainable agricultural practices that are environmentally friendly and economically viable for farmers. NIHOT programs aim to address all the challenges faced by horticultural sector in Nigeria, which include the food security and the economic viability of horticultural crops. We also focus on the conservation of indigenous tropical fruits and vegetables and the development of technologies for the efficient production and utilization of these crops for efficient production and utilization of the indigenous fruits and vegetable crops. NIOT is based here in Ibadan, some few minutes drive from IITA here in Nigeria. So we share the same ecological environment with IIT Nigeria. So having given that basic understanding and introduction about who we are in NIHOT and what we do, next slide please. I would like to go on straight to the issue that is at hand. We know that plant breeders are involved in a lot of things. And as plant breeders, we are very much interested in doing so many things at a time. which include solving the global mandates of population expansion. And here we have to meet the increasing demand for food quality, for food quantity, as the population keeps expanding year in, year out at a very, very um, exponential rate. Now, the way out for all these constraints, in the midst of all the work that breeders have to do to meet the teemingly increasing population, is also the challenge of the climate change that keeps affecting the productivity of our farmers. And the only way out of this is to be able to have innovations, to begin to add innovation to how crop improvement and variety development is being carried out so that it can be an inclusive bottom up approach that we be able to that will be able to encourage farmers and other stakeholders to adopt these varieties at the end of the investment period that the breeders have put into the development of these varieties. Secondly, in order to be able to promote and also to give return on investment, the scarce agricultural resources that have been expended on these breeding programs, crop variety development, have to be properly managed. And so, breeders cannot continue to do things as we used to do it like before. That is the top bottom approach, whereby we concoct whatever we want to concoct in the laboratory and then take it out to the stakeholders, to the farmers and others, and expect them to adopt it. If we have to be able to manage the resources we have, then it has to be all inclusive. Next slide. Now, talking about market intelligence, it is a broad term that bring together all the activities that the breeders is expected to actually put together in to understand and to actually put values to when developing new varieties for different environments. Here we can say that every breeder is interested in filling the gap. We want to fill the need. There is a need by the farmers, there is a need by the consumers, there is need from the industry, there is need depending on the crops that we are working with. There is even need from the transporters, from the traders, the retailers, the wholesalers. But for the breeders, we have a lot of all these needs modeled up together. And we call this one as a total market, the total market share. The crop that you are working with has a lot of needs that different stakeholders are asking for. And everybody is speaking at the same time. But how will the breeder bring out all these, identify these segments? Here we talk about market segment, which is a way the breeder is able to segmentize his targets that okay, this market needs so particular variety. Maybe it's photo period sensitive. Maybe it is for drought resistance. For this environment, this is the particular. They need short stature because they want to harvest it maybe with machine, and they need it to be drought tolerant because the environment lag is short with irrigation and also with precipitation, yearly precipitation. So the breeder has to tease out this information and be able to actually identify the market segment for which he or she is breeding for in order to be able to drive the adoption of such variety right from the beginning of the breeding program. Next slide. Now, from Sogbos Esu et al. 2018, I brought out this information about the breeding pipeline for variety development, which can be actually be adopted in any crop variety. And here we can actually see that for every breeder, we all go through these processes. And the process includes stakeholders' preferences. Here we are we should gather all the stakeholders along the production value chain to also include those that will be producing the seeds even at the after the registration and release of these crop varieties, and then go through the germplasm collection, the management, then define what the product targets are, in what environment, what do they need in what environment, what particular variety is it, do they need hybrids, do they need open pollinated varieties, which environment actually fit this variety that we are breeding for, which traits are they asking for in what environment and in which type of cultivar, what are the requirements for phytonutrients, nutritional, the quality aspect, the organoleptic properties. We can also have, then we can begin to do some characterization to actually tease out these traits and how we can combine these traits in our cultivar development program. How we can select the parents, then integrate genomic information. Like I said earlier, that innovation has to be brought in order for us to justify the investment in the breeding investment. Carry out some multi-environment evaluation, on-farm trials that you test in the target environment to which those particular varieties are being developed for. Then we have to also consider the seed system development, because at the end of the development, it is very important that the seeds of these new varieties has to be readily available for the producers so that it can be produced at the time that it needs to be produced, and it can enter the market for other stakeholders to be able to adopt these materials and take it forward. Without the availability of the seeds at the required time, then there is issue for that particular variety, because once they have it maybe at the beginning of the release and they cannot have access to the seed again, maybe because the seed is difficult to produce or any other reason, the farmers will definitely drop these varieties. And so it is very important for plant breeders that are working, that are developing new varieties, to put all this pipeline together and conduct a very, very robust market intelligence with regards to the crop of interest before actually starting the breeding program. Next slide. Now, so the traditional breeding system that we used to know, there is a missing link to variety adoption. And we have series of varieties that have been dropped or that remain on the shelf just because it followed the pattern of the top bottom approach, which normally was the traditional breeding system. But now, with the issue of market intelligence model, the primary target of this model, of this research, is to cultivate a wide range trait of traits that cater to diverse stakeholder groups. And it is a demand driven approach. If it is not demanded, then we don't waste the thin resources, the meager resources on what is not demanded. So the market intelligence model deals more on the on bottom up approach, demand driven approach, and it incorporates all the stakeholders. It incorporates all their traits, all the environment. It ranks the environment to guarantee inclusivity and then actual market adoption. Because at the end of the breeding program, the aim of the breeder or the breeding institution is to have their market, is to have their product in the market, in the hands of the farmers, even on the table of the consumers. If it is for processing, they want to see it in the industry. So if you want to have this product in the hands of the stakeholders, then the stakeholders are the important personalities that have to be included right from the beginning of the breeding program. Next slide. Now, I want to quickly talk about the architecture of this market intelligence. What exactly are we talking about when we say market intelligence. This is a series of diagnostic lenses that are used to bring specific agricultural needs into sharp focus. Now, it is a sum total of three critical variables, and these variables are the market segment, the target product profile, and the target population environment. So when you talk of market intelligence in breeding program, in innovative breeding program, inclusive breeding program, these three critical variables must be put together to give a sharp focus before breeding program actually commences on any variety development. For market segments, this is a specific group of growers and consumers who share common variety and demands. I'm going to give empirical example later on in my slide, but I just want to lay the proper foundation of what we mean by market segments. You may have maybe a particular crop that you are working with, and then you need to know what is the total market segment for a particular variety, maybe hybrids. Let's say an hybrid cultivar of the crop you are working with. Let's say I'm working on plantain and banana, and I said hybrid cultivar. What is the total market share of hybrid cultivar for in plantain production environments? In your country, you may have environments that favor plantain growing. You may have environment that will not favor. So that means your target environment first is those environments that actually favor the growth and production of that crop you're working with. Then going further, you have to now say, I have hybrids. I have open pollinated varieties. What is the market share for hybrids? This you can only get this information by interacting with the stakeholders, with the farmers, with the producers in those communities. So it means that you are going to carry out a market survey, a market intelligence survey, or you bring them together in a workshop where you can actually get information that will represent those growing areas. And then you'll be able to capture the information regarding how many people are interested in hybrids, how many people will be interested in my open pollinated varieties. Why are they interested in hybrids? Why are they not interested in open pollinated? Is it because the industry, perhaps you also have to identify the industrial use, maybe for consumption use and every other. So you segmentize your markets, and then you actually know which one carries you over 100, what is the percentage of each of the market share. Then we come to the target population environment, geographical and agroecological context of which a new variety is developed. The environment that you are targeting your new variety for. Then you can bring them across the nation, or maybe your country has different agroecologies that can be summed together. So you have that information also set aside. And then you come to the target product profiles, which are the precise technical specifications and breeding objectives, which are required to satisfy both the market segment and your target product environment. So all these three are the critical variables that give us information about the market intelligence of the crop you are working with, and by extension, that will give you the adoption potential of the new variety of that crop that you are working with. Next. Now, for us to be able to translate our environments into what we need to actually work with, we need to actually filter the needs of these stakeholders. These stakeholders are many, and their needs are also numerous. But we actually need to prioritize these needs as we go for the breeding program. Because, first of all, we do not have all the resources that we fit into solving all the stakeholder needs at one time. So the breeder needs to get himself ready to filter the needs of the stakeholder and be able to structure the TPPs, the target product profiles, in a way that the template will have a summarized information. So you need to have these five information. What are the exact traits that you require for this environment? So you have to bring the target environment, the market segment, and your TPPs. You have to bring them together like a single document. So that you can be able to prioritize information and be able to target your lean resources towards getting good results. So, what are the exact traits? What are the specific scale that you need to use to measure each of these traits? By and large, you have an existing champion variety, a product or a champion variety that is existing, but you want to have an improved variety over the existing product or the champion one. What are the traits that are needed in these new ones? How do I measure? What is the scale of my measurement? What is the absolute threshold score that I need for this new variety that I'm trying to breed for? How will I classify these varieties? Are they essential traits? Are they nice to have traits? Are they very important or their future traits? So that, those will give you information on what to trade off in the immediate and what to let go for the future. Next slide. Now, still talking about the market segmentation and the fundamental principles that guide segmentation. Since we have already identified and defined them that they are the groups of growers sharing common variety demands, they are influenced by processor and consumer preferences. These are the what, because what segmentize that one market from another is who are the buyers, who are they selling to, and this is also alongside with the grower specific requirements, which relates to the where and how the crop is cultivated. And these market segments evolve over time. It means that there is no static market segment. In a market segment that supports this trait at this time or at this period may change or evolve after some years. And it is because of these migrations here and there, and people move and market changes as well. So it doesn't remain static for a very long time. It evolves over time, responding to the shifting needs of the stakeholders. We have to identify various scales, including global, regional, and sub-regional, and national needs to be able to segmentize our markets. Next slide, please. Now, for different value chains that we are breeding for, and while we are developing our market segment and our TPPs, we have to actually talk about the different stakeholders. You may have the farmer stakeholders. Under farmers, you may have to separate the farmers and segmentize them into smallholder farmers versus the commercial farmers. And then identify the needs of the smallholder farmers. They may say, for example, they require low inputs because they are smallholders. But for the commercial farmers, they will demand high yielding hybrids. They have more funds to procure more inputs to use or to produce the hybrids. They may want to have the hybrids for machine harvesting, which the smallholders does not want. You just want something that it requires low input so that it will not demand too much money from his pocket. Under the consumers, because these are your stakeholders now that you are profiling the stakeholders and then you profile their needs, but you cannot lump all of them together. You can still have some to be urban consumers, rural consumers. Example, some of them in the urban may say, oh, because we are the working class, we are so busy, we don't want a product that cooks for a very long time. So for the rural, they may prioritize extended storage or to maintain their traditional taste to that particular variety. All this information have to be well documented, and this has to be done with them. Not that you sit by yourself behind your table and start thinking that this is what they think. No, you have to move out, bring them together from the designing and the conceptualization of the breeding program. For value chain stakeholders, those processors, they may actually, you may have those for fresh markets, for processors. The fresh market, actually, they may say, oh, it is the appearance, because when people want to come to buy, they want to see something that looks firm, looks fine, is appealing to the eyes. That is the fresh market trader. That is that value chain person. And for the processor, for the processor, he will want unit strict uniformity, because he wants to put them to machine. He wants to process them. So he wants the machine to be able to use all the varieties at the same time. He doesn't want everything to be sorted away, because they would have categorized and be able and adjust their machine to a particular size or weight. So they want varieties that will meet those sizes and those weights. For the TPEs, for the environment, you may consider the drylands, put them together. What are their needs? The humid regions, put them together. What are their special needs? Then we come to the socio-economic stroke gender groups. We have to also consider women need, because many a times new varieties, new products have been bred, but because the women that we use or we trade on these new products will not will not adopt it, because, for example, they may say, for example, for the cassava, they say the peeling is not easy, so it is difficult for them to peel. They spend too much time peeling, and that time, the hours they spend, is money to them. So at the end of the day, they dump the variety, because you have not considered what exactly is the need of the women group when it comes to cassava product, cassava variety. What is the need of the men? So all these market information are very, very critical to the development of new varieties. Next, please. Another thing that has to be considered when we are dealing with market intelligence, a bottom-up approach, is the multidisciplinary design ecosystem. For you to develop and bring out a champion product, then we need to integrate different market data long before the breeding phase begins. And here, we need to bring together every discipline. We need to work with the extension. We need to work with the value chain experts. We need to work with the extension people, the seed scaling partners. We need to also work with the socio-economic team, investors, the disease group, and then all these will work together, bring in all their own opinions and concepts, having worked with the stakeholders at the different levels of the disciplines, to bring together to develop the target product profile that will lead us to developing the leading champion product. Next slide. Now, I just want to define what we have been listening to, some traits that have been um, decided on when we are talking of target product profile. We have the ones we call the basic traits. And these basic traits are the must-have traits. No compromise. When it comes to these traits, the market will reject your new product if they do not have these basic traits. Because these basic traits are the ones that have been existing in the old variety that you want to replace. And therefore, they have to be there. They are must-have traits. No, you are not contending with it. It has to be maintained in the new variety if the new product is going to be adopted. And this information has to be carried along during the market segmentation, market intelligence workshops, or survey that you are having with the stakeholder groups. Then we have what we call the value added traits. These are the traits that represent um, commercially, these are the traits that are added to make your new product to be commercially viable. It's like you have a trait, you have a trait, it already has must have traits. And then maybe they are like nutritional traits now that you say, oh, for iron deficiency, this particular variety has higher iron content in it. It is a value added trait. And because of that value addition, the value added traits that is embedded in that new product, then we can use it to to pave way for the new product in in the market segment. But these have to be discussed together during the stakeholders engagement as to know whether it is a trait that they are interested in or it is not, so that effort will not just be in futility, bringing adding this value added trait into this new product. We also have what we call the game changing traits. The game changing traits may not be within the public breeding program at the time you are starting the breeding program, but they have potential. And this mining these traits will depend on additional research funds. So the traits must have broad and global implications, and they must have long-term pre-breeding strategy. So these are game-changing traits. We also have the future value added traits. They are not yet in the elite market, but you can also prioritize them in your target product profile. That these are the traits. If you can stumble on those traits as you're going along your breeding program, and then you can carry out your selections on them together with the stakeholders. You evaluate them together, allow them, give them the opportunity to go through the selection program process with you, so that they can actually go ahead and select these new materials even before they are nominated for registration or release in your country. The farmers and the stakeholders are already calling for it because the new product has the must have traits and other additional traits that are of interest to them based on their markets, based on their environment, based on the industries that are that are buying these things from them. Next slide, please. So I want to give an example of the like a market intelligence survey that we carried out on plantain. And just briefly to say that here we were able to identify what is the total market for plantain in Nigeria. And in Nigeria, we realized that plantain holds a 70% market share in the production, target production environment in Nigeria, which is in the humid lowlands, the rain-fed, which the rain-fed areas of Nigeria, which is the southwest, the south-south, and the southeast region. And these plantain varieties that have this 70% market share are the Agbagba type. They are the well accepted, the dominant variety. Now, if we are going to go into the development of a new product, this is already existing champion variety. Then it means that we have to work with the stakeholders. What are the traits that make this variety to be existing, to be a champion as it is now? And if we want to develop a new product that will be accepted and adopted, then they must have traits that make this a champion as it is now, must remain there. While additional traits can be added into the new varieties. Now we also have comparative markets, and we have the desert banana that shares the 25% in the southwest and the southeast. Then we have the cooking bananas, which only have 5% share. And this, by implication, means that if I as a breeder concentrate my effort on cooking banana, it means that it's not going to go too far because the market share as it is now is just 5%. Then what I need to do is to comb the stakeholder more. Why is the market share 5%? Perhaps maybe consumers are not taking up that product. Maybe there is no use for it in the industry. So they are just it's just there. There is no use per se for it in the industry to increase the share of that particular banana group in Nigeria as we speak now. So if you concentrate your effort on the cooking banana, it means that the efforts may not yield good return on investment. And by example, by example, we conducted the workshop. It was a workshop that we conducted with the stakeholders, we even with the this potential seed companies, and we went to the field, to the plantain field with them. And something very important, even with plantain, is the suckering ability. Because for the seed producer, they want the particular variety that will give enough suckers for them to be able to multiply and increase the availability of seeds for the growing population. Next slide. So there was a survey that we conducted across the nation, and we were able to market to segmentize the producers, marketers, processors with regards to the attributes of the varieties of the plantain products. For the producers only, what matters to them is early maturity, pest and disease resistance, tolerance to lodging. A producer does not want to lose anything on the field, and that he wants something that will take him to the field earlier. Now, when you come to the marketers, and the consumer, their focus is on the bunch. So you can see that for the marketers, for the processors, for the consumers, for the attributes on the big pulp, the good taste, firm texture, cut across these stakeholders. And so these are the ways we develop the target product profile. Because if you want to target a new product, then you have to consider the traits given by the producers. It has to be resistant to pest and disease, so that, and then it must have big pulp. They want their bunches and the fingers to be big. Now, for those ones, the ones that cut across all of them, all the stakeholders, all of them together, is the heavy bunch. The producer wants to have heavy bunch so that it can put more money, it can have more money. The marketer also, if it is big, it can give more money to the person that to the buyer. So you can see the trade how you will prioritize the trades and then put them into different segments so that we can work together with these stakeholders across the value chain. Next. Now, when we talk about the essential traits, the nice to have traits, we have consumer traits, yield traits, agronomic and disease traits. Here, our stakeholders are asked to rank all these traits. They themselves bring out these traits. Then we also give them the list. They also add their own list, and together we go together with them on this. For consumers, when it comes to plantain and banana, consumer traits are essential. They are essential traits. They are very, very important because the plantain and banana are processed into different food products. And so the taste, when you process them into different food products, is very, very essential. And if the consumers are not satisfied with these consumer traits, it ripples down to what the seller will sell. Because whoever sells a bad product to a consumer, the consumer will not go there again. And it means that the marketer will not go to the farm where they bought that product that was not selling. So it is a chain of rippled effects across the stakeholders. So for consumers, they want to be able, when we did the product development meeting with them, they want to be able to have, when they boil, for the firmness, when they boil, or if it is raw, they want their plantain to be firm. Even if they boil or process it into any product, they want it firm. And when they peel it, they still want the yield. So these are the way you get. How do you score? These are you put the score on all these traits. How do I score this trait? So if it is greater than 70 kg per 100 kg raw plantain when they peel it, that means that okay, the product may be acceptable. It's increasing the adoption level of that product. Then the sweetness, you measure with your bricks. You want to know if it is sweet. So when they convert it into different products, then it can be measured. But for the producer, the bunch weight, the number of fingers or the number of hands per the bunch, the finger weight and length is also very, very important. And then I put here that we should know that the plant stature and suckering behavior are classified as nice to have traits. Nice to have traits. So if that one is very important for the seed company, for the seed scaling experts among our stakeholders. Next slide, please. I just quickly want to talk about the second case study, which is segmenting the West African okra, and this we carried out in 2025. On we carried it out, and we were able to identify three market segments in Nigeria: the fresh medium pod, the fresh short pod, and the fresh long pod. So currently now, the fresh medium pod dominates the 50% of the total market share of okra in Nigeria. And so the breeding effort is on, on the medium and the short pod market because both of them together take 80% of the market share of okra. Next slide. So going further on market segmentation and market intelligence research, I would like to say here that a well-defined market segment sets the exact foundation required for a functional TPP. What I mean here is that if you are able to carry out that your market intelligence survey or workshop or interaction or stakeholder engagement, as the case may be, you carried it out properly, it gives you a very robust foundation that is required for you to set up your functional target product profile. Now we have to consider that if your target product profile is too broad, it means that you may have some traits, so many traits that it becomes difficult for you to actually prioritize the traits when the development program commences. At the same time, you may actually overlook some crucial traits that are of importance to your stakeholders if you have your TPP to be too long. Another way, the other side of it is that if it is too narrowly set, if your product profile is narrowly set up, to differentiate between one market segment from the another becomes difficult and then economically unviable. So this is where we have to come to the midpoint. We have to have a comprehensive market information gathered by a multidisciplinary team to provide a precise and actionable basis for product development and selection. Next slide. So this is the mandate for us in plant breeding or as plant breeders that want to go into inclusive plant breeding or variety development that will culminate or result into variety adoption. It is the bottom-up mandate. And this is the market intelligence that we speak about, which combines your market segmentation with your target product profiling, with your target product environment identified, and this leads to adoption. This leads to adoption. It ensures that all your scientific efforts translate directly into real world impact. And then it guarantees delivery of crops that meet farmers' need, meet consumers' need, and then support markets for high return on investments. Next slide. Next slide. So I want to say thank you for listening. I want to acknowledge the NIOT management team, the CG Initiative on Market Intelligence, the NC State Plant Breeding Seminar Series team, my audience, families, and friends. Thank you very much for creating time to join this seminar series. Thank you. Over.
All right, Dorcas, thank you so much. Uh, Please post your questions in the chat. I, you know, this topic is crucial for any plum breeder, in particular for young plum breeders starting. When we tend to overemphasize so many traits, and you know that the more traits you include in your selection index, the less gain you have per trait. Okay, and that's what you said about prioritizing the must-have traits is extremely important. But the question I have for you is, if you, once you define these market segments, how do breeders should approach it? Should they develop specific populations for each of these market segments, or should they develop very broad populations in which you have all these traits segregating at different levels, and then at the end you direct different lines or different hybrids for different market segments? Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. Carlos, that may actually be based on the availability of resources and funds at the breeder's disposal. That's number one.
Hmm.
So, so the answer, it is not like one answer fits all. Depending on the situation the breeder finds in or herself. Now, for if you have identified your market segment and then you have developed your target product profile, I believe that working with your germplasm after doing that, working with your germplasm is the next crucial step that you have to work with. And then you can develop a robust germplasm that have all these traits in them, segregating in the population, and then you can then be narrowing down your selection based on your different market segment because you cannot actually release one variety for all the market segments at once. But you can have the germplasm that have the traits that you have prioritized in your during your market segment in your population. And so then you can move them to stages and then based on your availability of funds, then you can now concentrate more on the one that has the highest market share and then is demanding at that particular time.
I fully agree with you in that regard. And that leads to my other point is parental selection becomes key on this when you build its population, making sure that some of these traits are present in at least some of the parents, meaning that in the segregating populations you have a chance to select for those traits in combination with others. Okay, so we have questions here from the audience. People is praising your presentation, but there's a question from Ifeluba Simeon asking do you suggest that the model you propose in your presentation can be applicable or obtainable for all horticultural crops?
Again, please.
Is it applicable to all crops? I mean,
for market intelligence?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. It is. If you want to actually drive adoption of your variety, it's something that you have to invest. You have to invest on it to be able to have efficient use of your resources.
Yes. The other question is, how do you handle traits that are very important but are negatively correlated, like sometimes yield and quality?
Well, for quality traits, there is a benchmark for the required daily the RDA. So As long as if you are able to just to get the minimum requirements fulfilled in that variety, and then it is being promoted for the additional, the value added traits in it. So sometimes because it is negatively correlated with the yield, and you have already identified your stakeholders and the market segment for the variety, and it is needed, and it is something that the stakeholders are calling for, then you know that the yield is not majorly their primary target, but that additional value addition trait. So the yield will be there, but it may not be as yielding as the one without the value added trait. So it means that working with your stakeholder all through the beginning of the development of the conceptualization of the breeding program to the end, your stakeholders have already, you already have markets for the end product. So you go ahead and give to them the variety needed because of the reasons they have given to you at the beginning of. So you definitely you have some group of growers that will grow that variety for the particular market niche.
Sure. Good. There's a question here that also I also had in mind. When you show all the disciplines that should be taken into consideration. The question here is: Are soil scientists not supposed to be involved too? Uh,
Okay.
and
Sorry.
my point related to that was, um, would you recommend or would you guys optimize the crop management for the genotypes that you are promoting? Because sometimes, I mean, what you want to what results in a higher productivity is the G optimizing the G by E. Okay, so optimizing the management sometimes is as important as optimizing the genetics.
Yes,
And soil, of course, is a very important part of the management. Yeah.
yes. So soil scientists is the, sorry,
Mm,
maybe I'm a nation. Every part of agricultural science is in the multidisciplinary team. And that's you have the R&D research team. So every of the agricultural discipline, even for the for those people that are in the climate or meteorology, they are also important.
mm, mhm. Okay. So uh, we have a few minutes for more questions. I specific to yams because I'm very interested in
They are
yams.
now a yam person.
I'm the yam man here in the U.S. Uh,
Okay.
I noticed that there are some land races or local varieties. For example, in Ghana, you have Puna, which is highly desirable for consumers and for the export market, and it actually fetches a premium. Okay,
Yes.
although the yield is not very good. I mean, not as good as materials that have been released. My question, and my question or my suggestion was also let's understand what makes Puna so great. Aside from quality, it may have some broader adaptation. It's difficult for farmers to leave Puna. Okay, all right. And
Yeah.
my other question was, can we do something to Puna to improve the productivity? Can we clean it from viruses and bring clean material to the field? Because usually the breeders tend to prioritize the materials that we develop. And
Mm,
in that comparison, Puna may not be favored because it's loaded with viruses, for example. In order
mm,
to make a fair comparison, let's put it side by side. So sometimes we underestimate the competition, I would say, or what is there, the reference, as you mentioned. But we need to understand why those local varieties or those varieties that have been there for decades are so difficult to replace. Okay. All right. So that's a sort of a recommendation. We don't have any other questions. I'm going to share my screen now again. Thank you so much, Dorcas.
thank,
Very
thank you.
uh, presentation. A lot of praises received. Thank you for the audience that participated.
Thank
Next
you.
week at the same time, we're going to have Dr. Agre Paterna from IITA Nigeria talking about yams of all things, the integrated
Bye.
and pangenomics in yam breeding pipelines. Please make an effort to attend and have a nice weekend. Thank you again, Dorcas, and appreciate it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Bye.
All right. Bye bye.